Biden repeatedly vowing that he would respect the Fed's independence, not put any pressure on Jay Powell, unlike his predecessor. But last week, President Biden couldn't help it. He actually did mention the Fed and what he thought they should do next. Take a listen.
We learned that the economy added 199,000 jobs again this month. Solid, steady job growth. Like that, we call a sweet spot that's needed for stable growth and lower inflation, not encouraging the Fed to raise interest rates. My plan is to address inflation. It starts with a simple proposition. Respect the Fed. Respect the Fed's independence, which I have done and will continue to do. My job as president is not to not only nominate highly qualified individuals for that institution, but to give them the space they need to do their job. I'm not going to interfere with their critically important work. And while I'll never interfere with the Fed's judgments and decisions or tell them what they have to do, they're independent. They're independent. I believe that inflation is our top economic challenge right now, and I think they do too. I respect Jay's independence. Jay has proven the independence that I value in the federal chair, in the Fed chair. In the last administration, he stood up to unprecedented political interference.
You know, as president, particularly when you're running for president, it's real easy to say you want to interfere. But when your own election could be in jeopardy, well, things change. I want to bring a Walzer Wealth Management president, Rebecca Walzer. Listen, we know there's going to be all sort of outside influences on the Federal Reserve. And it's not just the president. And that was sort of a hint. Listen, don't hike rates anymore. No one believes the Fed's going to hike rates. But he did mention the Federal Reserve in public. Yeah. And that was something he said he wouldn't do, President Biden.
Yeah, and it's completely different because Trump went after them all the time. You know, Charles, there is a long history of the Federal Reserve actually implementing policy during election cycles. 8 of the last 9 election cycles going back to 1984, they have. Obviously, in March of 2020, they cut because coronavirus, so that's not really. But even in the previous cycle in 2016, they impacted. So it's not that during an election year, the Fed won't act. They will. But obviously, I think that Powell was going to be a little more sensitive because Trump did go after him so hard during his term, before his term started. And so I think that he's going to try to avoid it looking political, but he has to do his job.
Well, President Bush, the first President Bush, he actually blamed the Fed for losing.
Yes, for not cutting rates sooner.
Right. And of course, you've got the former head of the Federal Reserve and Janet Yellen, and she's been out there taking a victory lap. And more recently, today, she said there's going to be a soft landing. It's a tough one, right? Is that also a wink and a nod toward the current Fed, or is that just something else?
It's all the same thing. It's like the headline number looks good, but then when you actually look at it, you start to see there's problems. Inflation is sticky. We see the dot plot is actually over, even though they unanimously said we're not going to do anything right now. We're going to pause and hold. The dot plot is all over. There are a lot of opinions. Inflation's looking sticky, and so how are they going to bring in this soft landing while still having a sticky inflation?
Yeah, it's so ironic you mentioned that because Jay Powell gave us his own. He's developed his own metrics, right? The super core. The super core is actually going up. It's not coming down right now.
Exactly. And people are feeling that. You know, someone was saying, there's all these baby boomers retiring. And then they said, but there are actually some baby boomers have multiple jobs. Why? Because they cannot survive on their one job that they have. And now they can't retire. So they have more than one job where they're not retiring. So we see that there are still massive problems that have to be addressed. And it's not going to just be, certainly I'm glad that March is kind of moving back to May because that was premature.
Right.
We are not going to probably cut before Europe, and Europe was not going to get the CPI print until April.
Right, and to your point with the baby boomers, like everything else, you got to break that up. I saw somewhere with folks over 75, the vast majority own their homes outright, where those under still have mortgages, and folks over 80 years old, it's crazy what's happening there. So it's still a mixed bag.
It is.
But politics are going to play a big role in this. Also, to your point, what other central banks are doing are going to play a big role in this. What else? Because the issuance, I think, the Treasury issuance, I think is going to be something that the Fed won't have any control over.
I know.
But it's going to kind of pressure yields to remain sort of elevated, no?
I mean, Charles, this is the whole shift that we took at the end of the global financial crisis, GFC, and we really implemented modern monetary theory, which is this theory that you can really disassociate your currency with hard assets. It doesn't matter what your hard asset base is. You can print as long as you can service your debt. And I just fundamentally do not agree with that Keynesian economic kind of theory of it's all about just stimulus, stimulus. We are a consumption-based society. We have to keep the liquidity and the stimulus coming, and the Fed knows that, or else the economy will grind to a halt, and none of us want to see what that looks like.
What do you think, Rebecca, is out there that no one's talking about? Because listen, there are
you don't want to ask me that question.
Well, I know. Listen, it's not a 12-hour show, right? But if you can pinpoint
concisely,
yeah, just something that maybe could be
biggest threat right now, I think, is the BRICS nations, us moving to multipolarity, ending dollar hegemonic status, and you can see that it's coming because Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, is joining BRICS effective January. So we're talking about next month.
Right.
This is coming, and people do not understand how much we take for granted our global reserve status as a currency.
It's interesting because a lot was made of that photo between Vladimir Putin and the head of Saudi Arabia. It wasn't a fist bump. They were like, hey, one day soon. Of course, Putin said that was the beginning of the end of Western monetary control.
They're saying it.
Right.
I'm saying it. No one's listening. They are saying it. Wake up, world. It's coming.
Well, you're on record. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Charles.
Talk to you again soon.